Making a character is the first thing you have to do when you're joining a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. But why is that so hard to do? Besides having to choose between pages of character classes, races, backgrounds, you also have to choose spells, weapons, and items, and that's only if you're starting at level 1. If you're not, there's literally dozens of subclasses to choose from. On top of every mechanical choice you have to make, there's the expectation that you have to come up with a story and background for your character as well. And as a new player, you'd be forgiven for simply not having the brain space to work in a creative writing session on top of and getting your mind around a whole set of unique mechanics. The first point I'll make in this video is that you really don't need to overthink the concept of a character to play Dungeons & Dragons. The character you play will develop over time through the story of the game and the relationships with the other player characters. And as a starting point, the character classes themselves give you a little personality archetype that you can fill in with just a little effort. The studious but socially awkward wizard, the brutal but lovable barbarian, the outgoing but cagey bard. They're archetypes that write themselves if you don't want to, and they work really well. On top of that, races and subclasses help you generate your own unique take on the well-trodden archetype, so you can play dozens of campaigns before you feeling like you're walking on well-trodden ground. But with all that in mind, you're still staring at a blank character sheet trying to come up with a character that isn't generic and isn't just going to be you with a battle axe or Sasuke in a wizard hat this time. So, I'm going to give you a list of 5 steps you can take to create a character that is both unique to you and perfect for your next role-playing game. If you like these tips and want to see more, please take the time to like and subscribe. Alright, let's get into it. Number 1, list your favorite characters. Your favorite characters are who you are inspired by in fiction, so they're going to be incredibly important in creating your character. I know we just said we aren't going to make Sasuke again, but bear with me, go ahead and write Sasuke down, because we're going to make a bullet point breakdown of why you like him, because there's a reason you went with anime's favorite edgelord instead of Mr. Hokage himself. It's because Sasuke is cool. Don't discount that. We all like making characters that are cool. But when making them in D&D, I think we don't understand how to translate that cool onto the table. Cool on TV is portrayed as antisocial characters giving monologues, not listening to others, and doing everything on their own because everyone else is incompetent. Cool at the table is making sure you do what you're good at, but also making sure others get a chance to do what they're good at. A cool character is wholly themselves, and they own it. Aragorn is cool, but Aragorn relies on his allies. Do you think any character you make could be cooler than Aragorn? No! Then hey, now you know how to make a cool character at the table. Go ahead and list your favorite characters. For each of them, I want you to write out what you like about them. And then I want you to write what you think their defining character trait is. After that, I want you to write their fatal flaw. What's the thing they need to overcome to become the best version of themselves? Then, I want you to write what their defining physical aspect of their character is. What's an image that comes to mind when you think of them? If they had to be reduced to an outline, silhouette, or an object, what would that look like? Number 2, identify the core conflict of the campaign. Once you know what the core conflict of the campaign is, you can craft a character that is perfectly positioned to interact with it. Are there 2 factions at odds with one another in the main city of the campaign? Maybe your character is the Romeo in one faction to the other faction's Juliet, 2 pining star-crossed lovers. You could even collaborate with another player around the table to craft these characters together, playing out the classic tragedy your own way. The key consideration here is that you want your character to be personally connected to the campaign by positioning them within the core conflict. This way, things that are important to the main plot of the campaign are important to your character too. It's a character creation strategy that never fails to raise the stakes, and I highly encourage you to work with your dungeon master to do this. After you do this, you can start to roll the basic stats of your character and start to think about what your character's emotional arc will be. Number 3, trauma and trauma response. A D&D character either starts traumatized or is on their way to becoming traumatized due to the events of a campaign. Typically, I would recommend the former, as it's easier to craft a personality doing this. For the former, it's important when you're creating a character to figure out what terrible thing happened to them in the past and led them here. A person typically doesn't become an adventurer out of nowhere. Normally, it's due to something very bad that happened to them, which meant that adventuring was the only way to move their life forward. You can look at literally every main character in Baldur's Gate 3 for examples on this. But for example, a character whose village was attacked by goblins could suffer trauma in several different ways, and each of those will help you define who your character is. When encountering a goblin, do they want to kill it in a rage? Do they freeze, unable to do anything? Or do they want to run? Will they be able to overcome this natural response? And if so, how? The other characters around the table may be helpful in getting that character to confront their fear and be able to control their natural trauma response over time. That's a character arc that's super narratively satisfying and involves engagement from the whole table. And remember, it doesn't need to be goblins. It could be an abusive family patriarch, memories of a lost loved one, or just anything else personal to your character. Number 4, want versus need. Your character will start the campaign by wanting something. This could be gold, power, revenge, safety. Whatever it is, that's what they're fighting for at level 1. As your character develops, however, they'll find that maybe what they wanted isn't what they needed. Maybe your character wants to get revenge on their evil uncle who stole their property and banished them from the family. But maybe what they need is to develop a relationship based on trust and mutual respect with their newfound family of teammates. Then altogether they can kick that uncle's ass. But it won't be the ass kicking that was the true thing gained from the experience. It was the friends gained along the way. Thinking at the start about what this want versus need arc might be is a great way to help you get a vision of what your character's journey might end up looking like. Number 5, run it by the DM. After you have this great basis for your character, run the first draft by your DM. It's possible they may have notes for you. This is often just ways to help tie your story into the physical world of the campaign. Maybe you said your evil uncle who stole your land was from the north, but the DM has a perfect story hook for that in the south, so you guys make that change together. A good DM isn't going to make you change the core of your character, as long as you didn't try to create something completely out of scope for the campaign that the DM pitched you. If you did that, head smack of shame. But assuming you're both good intentioned, this part of developing your character will just smooth the edges and help land your character firmly in the world of the game you're about to play. Here's some final notes I have on this concept. Some people may view the idea of coming up with an idea for your character's arc before you've even had your first session, putting the cart before the horse. What if your character doesn't even make it past the first session? And doesn't this make it so you're not as flexible for what happens in the campaign? And while that's a fair point, here's what I'll tell you. A character can die at any time. Whether you use resurrection magic or not, it's going to be an emotional moment for the table. It makes it even more dramatic, emotional, and tragic if you know what that character could have been. That's what makes the game great. Tragedy is an important part of storytelling. Sometimes a person doesn't get to complete their character's journey, but it's important to have an idea of what that journey might have been. It also doesn't mean that you're railroading your DM into having certain plot points. Having those details in your backstory are gifts to your DM. It gives them characters, quest hooks, and emotional payoff without them having to generate it and the necessary buy-in all by themselves. Thanks so much for watching, and special thanks to my patrons for helping support the content I'm bringing to you. If you have an interest in supporting the channel, I have a Patreon that gives you access to a D&D supplement called the Codex of Contagion, which reworks how diseases work in D&D. If that sounds cool to you, I'd encourage you to check it out. My name is Ben DeHart, and remember, all this builds character. See ya.